Have you ever opened your eyes in the morning and for just 1 second believed that today would finally be different? Then your hand reached for your phone before your feet ever touched the floor. One notification became 5. 5 became 20. A few minutes disappeared. And somehow, before the day had even begun, it already felt like it belonged to someone else. Here's the strange part. Most people think this is a discipline problem. It isn't. It's a decision that happens before you're fully awake, and almost nobody notices it. Because there is one invisible habit, one tiny moment that quietly determines whether your brain spends the rest of the day chasing distractions or creating the life you've been promising yourself. I'll show you exactly what that habit is before this video ends. Not because I'm trying to keep you watching, but because if I tell you now, without first changing the way you see your day, your brain will treat it like another motivational quote. And you'll forget it before tomorrow morning. So for the next few minutes, forget everything you think you know about changing your life. Because it probably isn't your motivation that's failing. It's the system you've been living inside. You're told that successful people simply wake up earlier, work harder, stay disciplined, never lose focus. But that's only the part you can see. What you don't see is the invisible architecture behind every action. Imagine trying to build a skyscraper on cracked foundations. It doesn't matter how beautiful the building looks. Sooner or later, everything begins to collapse. That's exactly how most people try to change their lives. They attack the visible habits while ignoring the invisible system underneath. So every Monday feels exciting. Every Tuesday feels harder. By Friday, they're right back where they started. Not because they're lazy, because systems always defeat intentions. Every single time. So today, we're not rebuilding your entire life. We're rebuilding the first 5 minutes. Because sometimes, the smallest doorway leads to the biggest room. The morning reset. Tomorrow morning, before your phone, before your messages, before the world tells you who it needs you to be. I want you to do one thing, one tiny promise. Drink a glass of water. Take 3 slow breaths. Stretch for 60 seconds. Write 1 sentence. Read 1 paragraph. Choose only one. That's it. Simple, almost disappointingly simple. Which is exactly why most people skip it. They believe transformation must feel dramatic. It rarely does. Real change usually arrives so quietly that your old self doesn't even realize it's disappearing. Here's what's really happening. The first completed action of your morning becomes evidence. Evidence that you can rely on yourself. Your brain doesn't build identity from what you plan. It builds identity from what you repeatedly observe. Every promise you keep whispers the same sentence. I'm someone who follows through. Every promise you break whispers another. I'll try again tomorrow. Your mind believes whichever voice it hears most often. Not because it's true, because it's familiar. So stop trying to convince yourself you're disciplined. Prove it. 1 action, 1 minute, 1 completed promise. That's how trust begins. Not with motivation, with evidence. Now here's something most people never realize. The first battle of your day isn't against laziness. It isn't against procrastination. It isn't even against your phone. It's against automatic living. Because every morning, your brain asks one silent question. Who will make today's decisions? Will it be your habits? Will it be algorithms? Will it be other people's demands? Or will it be you? The answer isn't spoken. It's demonstrated. Within the first few minutes after waking up. Long before breakfast. Long before work. Long before the rest of the world notices you're awake. That first decision echoes through every decision that follows. This is why 1 intentional minute can change an entire day. Not through magic, through momentum. Momentum isn't created by giant leaps. It's created by removing friction from the very first step. So tomorrow, don't try to become a completely different person. Become the kind of person who wins the first minute. Then let the second minute follow, then the third. Life doesn't usually change in one dramatic morning. It changes through mornings so ordinary, they almost seem insignificant. Until one day, you look back and realize those ordinary mornings quietly built an extraordinary life. But there's a problem. Winning the morning doesn't guarantee you'll win the day. Because by midday, the real battle begins. The world gets loud. Midday battle, 4 to 8. Morning gives you hope. Midday tests whether you meant it. This is where almost every transformation quietly begins to fall apart. Not because your goals were too small, not because you suddenly became lazy, because your brain is doing exactly what it has been trained to do. Chase what feels easy. Avoid what feels difficult. Repeat what feels familiar. Think about it. You wake up motivated. You complete your morning reset. You feel different, more focused, more in control. Then a few hours pass. Your phone lights up. You check one notification. 1 becomes 3. 3 becomes 10. You tell yourself, I'll only be here for a minute. 20 minutes disappear, then 30. Now the work feels heavier than it did before. Not because the task changed, because your attention did. This isn't weakness, it's dopamine. Most people think dopamine is the chemical of happiness. It isn't. It's the chemical of anticipation. It constantly asks, what could be more rewarding than what you're doing right now? One more notification, one more video, one more refresh, one more scroll. Your brain keeps chasing the promise of satisfaction while moving farther away from the things that actually create it. And that's why the middle of the day feels so dangerous. The excitement of the morning is gone. The finish line is still far away. Your brain enters what psychologists sometimes call the motivation valley. This is where discipline is often misunderstood. People imagine disciplined people never feel distracted. They do. The difference is, they don't negotiate with every distraction. They notice it. Then they return. Again, and again, and again. So here's your second micro action. The moment you catch yourself drifting, don't judge yourself. Don't start another speech about how you've wasted the day. Pause. Literally stop moving. Take one slow breath. In through your nose. Out through your mouth. Now ask yourself one question. What's the smallest action that moves me forward? Not the perfect action. Not the impressive action. The smallest one. Close the extra browser tabs. Put your phone in another room. Clear one item from your desk. Set a timer for just 2 minutes. Create one tiny piece of forward movement. Because action creates motivation far more often than motivation creates action. This is what I call the gentle reset. Most people live by one invisible rule. If I mess up, the day is ruined. Miss an important task? I'll catch up tomorrow. Lose an hour to distractions? Today's already wasted. Break your routine? I'll start again on Monday. Notice how extreme that sounds. One imperfect moment somehow becomes permission to waste the next 12 hours. Imagine getting one flat tire and deciding to slash the other 3. That's exactly what we do to ourselves. Failure isn't usually what destroys progress. The story we attach to failure does. So replace that story. Instead of asking, why do I always do this? Ask, how quickly can I return? That single question changes everything. Because every time you return, your brain collects another piece of evidence. I don't quit. Not because you never fall, because you always come back. Here's the truth almost nobody talks about. People obsess over becoming consistent for months, or years, or the rest of their lives. But those days don't exist yet. Tomorrow doesn't exist, next month doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is this afternoon, this decision, this moment. You don't need to win the rest of your life today. You only need to win the next few hours. Because that's what this video has always been about. Not changing your life someday, changing it within these 24 hours. If you reclaim this afternoon, you change today. If you change today, you change the story your brain carries into tomorrow. That's how extraordinary lives begin. Not by winning forever, by refusing to surrender this afternoon. But even if you win the morning and survive the battle of the afternoon, one final test still remains, the most important one. Because every night, before you fall asleep, your brain writes a story about who you are. Most people never realize they're writing it, and that story quietly becomes tomorrow's reality. If you change the story, you change the person. That's where the final piece of this journey begins, the midnight choice.
You've made it through the morning. You've survived the battle of the afternoon. Now only one moment remains. The quietest one. The moment nobody applauds. The moment nobody posts about. The moment that quietly decides whether today becomes the beginning of a new life or just another memory. Because long before tomorrow morning arrives, your brain is already preparing for it. Every night, while you sleep, your mind isn't simply resting. It's organizing, sorting, connecting, asking one silent question. What kind of person did I spend today becoming? The answer isn't based on your intentions. It isn't based on your goals. It isn't even based on whether today was perfect. It's based on the evidence you leave behind. And that's why the final habit happens before your head touches the pillow. The evidence journal tonight. Before you go to sleep, open a small notebook or even a single sheet of paper. Write down only 3 things. Not your biggest achievements. Not tomorrow's goals. Evidence. One promise you kept. One moment you returned instead of giving up. One thing that made today meaningful. Keep it short. 1 sentence each. That's all. It seems almost too simple. But think about what your brain naturally remembers. The awkward conversation. The mistake at work. The task you didn't finish. The moment you got distracted. Your mind is designed to hold on to problems, not progress. So if you never collect proof that you're changing, your brain quietly concludes that you aren't. Page after page. Your journal begins telling a different story. Not the story of someone becoming perfect. The story of someone becoming reliable. Someone who keeps finding their way back, even after life pulls them off course. Now remember the promise I made at the beginning of this video? I told you there was one invisible habit, one tiny decision, that quietly determines whether every other habit survives. This is it. It isn't waking up at 5 in the morning. It isn't meditation. It isn't cold showers. It isn't perfect discipline. Those things can help. But none of them are the reason people truly change. The invisible habit is returning. Returning after distraction. Returning after failure. Returning after self-doubt. Returning after the days when you don't feel like trying anymore. Most people believe successful people never lose momentum. That's an illusion. Everyone loses momentum. Everyone gets distracted. Everyone has days when the easier choice wins. The difference isn't who falls off track. The difference is who comes back before one bad moment becomes one bad week, one bad month, or one bad year. Returning isn't something you do once. It's an identity. A quiet promise you make to yourself. No matter how many times I drift, I will always return. Because every return casts one vote. A vote for the person you're becoming. One vote isn't life-changing. Neither are 10, but hundreds of quiet votes, cast over ordinary days, create an extraordinary life. And that's why changing your life in 24 hours was never about becoming a completely different person before tomorrow arrives. It was about changing the direction of one day. One morning you chose yourself first. One afternoon you refused to surrender. One night you collected evidence instead of excuses. That is how a different life begins. Not through one dramatic decision, through one ordinary day, lived differently. Tomorrow morning, your phone will still be there. The notifications will still be waiting. The distractions won't disappear. The world won't suddenly become quieter. But something else will be waiting too. A different version of you. Not stronger, not perfect. Just someone who now knows the way back. Because once you learn to return, you are never truly lost again. So when you wake up tomorrow, and life quietly asks the same question it asks every single morning, who will make today's decisions? Remember this, your future won't be decided by the days you never fail. It'll be decided by the days you choose to return. Again, and again, and again. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Years from now, when someone asks you, when did your life begin to change? Will your answer be, someday? Or will it be, it started with one ordinary day when I finally came back to myself. Black screen. Silence.